Once you have created elements in Illustrator, you're going to need to move them, scale them, adjust them, change their stacking order, all functions which are easy to access and apply. Let's take a look at the huge difference between the selection and direct selection tools, as well as free transform, grouping, nudging, stacking, and the all-important isolation mode. Okay, in our CMYK document, let's now jump over to our left-hand page, our A3 poster, and select our background shape. Now what we're going to do is just copy that into memory, Command-C or Control-C on the PC, and for a new keyboard shortcut for you, let's go to the Edit menu and go down, and you see we have Paste in Front, and that'll basically drop it back down in the same location it was copied from. So it's kind of like Paste in Place, but it really depends on the object that's selected. But Paste in Front, a simple way to duplicate the current object over the top of itself. So Command F or Control F on the PC will do that. And then we can come over to the color palette, and let's maybe just quickly fill this with a red so it looks different to the background when we change it. Now we want to use the transform dialog boxes to adjust the size and potentially the position as well of these objects. So let's start out up here in the control panel and go ahead and click on transform. Now the chances are you have a larger screen than I do here, so you won't see the word transform, but you will see these options, and you can see that we have our width and our height, and I've currently got them not constrained. Okay, if you click on there and this icon appears here, changing one dimension will proportionally change the other one as well, so make sure that that is deselected. Now the height, we're simply going to change this to, say, 140 millimeters, and you'll notice our anchor point is currently in the center, alright? So if we go ahead and say enter or OK, it's going to scale this object down to 140 height from its original central point, okay? Which is fine, but we now want to move this down the page so its top edge is aligned at precisely 260 millimeters down. Now these are dimensions I've already got in my artwork, which is why we're using them. So if we go back to transform here, what we can do now is set our anchor point to be on the top edge. Then we can change its Y value. Notice when we change from the center point here, which is currently 210 down, halfway down the page, we click on the top anchor point, we can see that the top is actually 140 down. Alright, so let's go ahead and select the 140 there, and we'll change it for 260. Go ahead and hit return, and it drops it down into the right location. Now width-wise, this is also very cool. We want to change the width. We don't have any vertical guides on this, so we can't simply snap it to the width. But I do know that I want 30 millimeters on each side, okay? That means this object needs to be 60 millimeters less in size, correct? So, how about this for a really cool option? Go back to transform. Make sure we're on one of the centers. It doesn't matter if it's the top or the middle because we're scaling the width here. As long as we're in the middle on any of these three, what we can do is come to the width, and at the end of the current value, doesn't matter what you've got it set to, we're going to hit minus 60. Okay, so we're going to ask Illustrator to do 297 minus 60 millimeters. Say OK, and it automatically scales it. Isn't that very cool? So very easy to do, and it's nice that Illustrator can handle this multitude of scaling functions for us. Now, we've got this down in a position where it might be used as a text frame. So what we'll do is use our keyboard shortcut as we did before and pull up the split into grid function. Okay, and remember that we set that keyboard shortcut to Command Option Shift G on the Mac or Control Alt Shift G on the PC. And we'll go into the columns, and let's increase this. Let's go ahead and turn on preview as we do it. Let's add, say, 6 columns, make it nice and even here, and we'll also change the gutter to a nice round 5 millimeters, I think. That should do the trick. All right, let's say OK there. Now what we want to do is bring in another graphic from another document that we can use down at the bottom here so we can bend and distort our text frames around it, okay? So what we'll do is bring up the open dialog box, Command O or Control O on the PC, and back inside our project files once more, let's go into the Illustrator files folder, and we're going to come down and choose this one, Lechime Shape, okay? Now if you select it and open it, basically what this is, if we just fit in window here, depending on the size of your screen you're looking at, you can see I've created a very simple silhouette of 3 mountains, okay? And this company that we're creating the advertising for is basically being called Le Cime dell'Italia, which simply means, if you translate it, the tops of Italy. And it's basically a bicycle touring company based up in the mountains in Italy. So we've basically got here the cime, the 3 tops, if you like, of the mountains. And I want to use this as a graphic element that would push the type away, and we can see that reflected when we do the artwork later on. So let's go ahead and select that graphic, Command-C, Control-C on the PC, and copy it into memory. Come back over to our print campaign, okay? And at this point, it's probably worth creating a brand new layer. So use your keyboard shortcut now to bring up the layer options and a new layer, and let's call this mountain shape. All right, and we go ahead and click OK. You can see it has been created above the backdrop color layer, which is where we were a second ago. And then what we can do is paste in place, because again, I've got it prepared in a document for you. So let's go to Edit and choose Paste in Place. It drops it down at the bottom here. What we can do is just lock that to be on the safe side. Now, whilst we're here, let's come down and select our text frames. I'm going to hold down the Shift key and make sure that all 6 of them are highlighted. Now, these aren't text frames yet, but that's the ultimate goal here. And what we'll do is also create a brand new layer for these and call them Type. Click OK, and just like we've done before, if we just scroll down here, we can see the red dot on the backdrop color layer tells us we have elements selected. With those 6 highlighted, we can now drag them up so they are on their own layer, okay? So what we can do now is let's zoom in and take a look at using a different selection tool, because everything so far has been done using the standard selection tool. This is the black arrow up here inside your tools palette. Well, you've also got the direct selection tool here, and this is what we really need to use to edit the path. Remember that a path is merely a shape that's defined by points. So if we can access those individual points and move them around, we can alter the shape of the path. So we're going to switch back and forth between these, so it's worth noticing those keyboard shortcuts. V for selection, A for direct selection, and everyone has their own little ways of remembering them. For some reason, I call them Victoria and Albert. Don't ask me why. I don't know if it's a British thing, but that's how I do it, okay? So direct selection tool, what we're going to do is hit A to access that, and you see we have a hollow cursor now, basically. Now, nothing changes until we deselect, and then we reselect. Now, to make this easier to see, let's go into our outline mode, Command Y, Control Y on the PC, and move over one of our corner points and select it. You can see that that is now solid, whereas the other ones are hollow. What this means is if we grab that point and drag it around, you can see that we're actually changing the shape and form of that entire path, all right? So very easy to do, and we can, easily take this out of control. What we're going to do is use it for a very precise function, if we just undo that, which is to align each of these points to the guideline that we've created here by bringing in that shape in the background, okay? So feel free to zoom in and look a little bit more closely at this, and we've also got our smart guides activated by default, so as we drag one of these points up, it's going to stay perfectly straight and also align precisely to that shape we have locked in the background, okay? And this is really very cool. The direct selection tool is very powerful. You need to use it at the right time, obviously. You don't use it for moving, you use it for editing, okay? So you can scroll across here with the hand tool as you do this and make sure that all of these items snap up into the right location, okay? So very, very handy, very quick and easy. Now, if we do this a bit later on, once you learn how to do things like reflections and copy and paste multiple elements across the page, you could actually just do half of these and then reflect a copy of them on the other side, but you'll learn that in time, I'm sure. So if I zoom back down now, you can see that I've adjusted those objects, and maybe if we come over here into our mountain shape and turn off the visibility for the layer, you can see the exact result. So any type that we then ultimately flow into here will sort of be forced to hide down here and move across to the left and then reappear in the next column and do the same down here. So even if the shape isn't there, we'll still get the sense that the mountain shape is there and the type is flowing around it. So this is actually a very cool way to do it. Now, just as a side note, this can be done using a function called text wrap, which we'll try out a little bit later on. But as well as this particular example serving as a way to show you how to use the direct selection tool, the text wrap function does require that the object which blocks out the type and forces it to move away, in this case the mountain, always has to stay present, okay? If we don't want the mountain there, this is the great way to do it. You customize the complete shape of the text frame, or any object in fact, by using the direct selection tool and the smart guides, and you end up with just the shape you need. Now, as a final option, let's go ahead and turn on the mountain shape again. Let's say if we were going to keep this shape and it was maybe tinted slightly differently, it was just barely there in the background, we wouldn't really want the type to flow down inside these and actually touch the very edges there, okay? If you imagine lines of type going in here, they will touch that edge. So maybe we want these particular bottom edges to be another, 3 or 4 millimeters further up, okay? Well, remember our move dialog box that we've already used many times. We've seen it work on guides, and we can use it on objects. You can also use it on points, all right? So let's do this. With the direct selection tool, we're going to click and drag, and remember we've got the mountain layer locked, so we're not worried about selecting those. We click and drag across, and we've highlighted only those bottom points on the shape. If we now bring up our move dialog by hitting the Enter key on the keyboard, We say horizontally we don't wish to move, but vertically I'm going to go up -4 millimeters. Have a look at that. Perfectly precise movement, still reflecting the same shape, but only moving the bottom part of those frames. So the top stays exactly where they are because we're using the direct selection tool. So go ahead and click OK, and once again we can come back and hide our mountain shape layer here, and if you like, go back into the preview mode and deselect so you can see the finished shape there.